Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking into the Department of Homeland Security, specifically Secretary Kristi Noem.
Right, there's this Wall Street Journal report we're digging into.
It seems to highlight a bit of a disconnect, maybe, between how Secretary Noem's very public style is seen by the administration versus, well, some folks within ICE.
Exactly. It's that tension we want to explore. The administration seems to like the high-profile approach.
But the report suggests some immigration and customs enforcement officials, the ones actually doing the work, might have some concerns.
Precisely. That contrast between the, let's say, public messaging and the operational side of things.
Okay, so let's dive in. The report mentions a specific incident back in January, a social media post.
Yeah, in New York City, Secretary Noem posted on X, formerly Twitter, about an ICE raid that was apparently happening right then.
What did the post actually say? Do we know?
We do. It was January 28th, really early, 4:43 a.m. She wrote something like, "We're doing this right, doing exactly what President at Real Donald Trump promised the American people, making our streets safe. Live this AM from NYC. I'm on it."
Wow, okay. And she had a photo too.
Yep. Wearing an ICE baseball cap in the picture.
So the immediate concern there would be jeopardizing the raid itself, announcing it while it's ongoing.
That's the core accusation, yeah. Surprise is pretty crucial for these kinds of operations.
Right. But was there an official response to that?
Well, a department spokesperson, Tricia McLaughlin, apparently claimed the raid was almost over by then.
Almost over. But the journal's sources said something different.
They did. Their sources suggested that the post might have, tipped people off, leading to fewer arrests than they'd planned for.
So that really highlights the potential clash between wanting publicity and needing operational security.
Definitely. And the report frames this as part of a bigger picture, not just a one-off incident.
A broader publicity drive, maybe? An anti-immigration focus being pushed very publicly?
That seems to be the context. The report gives other examples of her being very visible.
Like what sort of things?
Well, there was a big ad campaign, $200 million, with the message "Leave Now."
Okay.
And photos of her posing with prisoners down in El Salvador, pictures of her in the cockpit of a Coast Guard plane.
Right. I remember seeing something about photos of her on horseback being displayed in department offices, too.
That's mentioned as well. And even walking on stage at a town hall meeting to the song Hot Mama by Trace Adkins.
Huh. Okay. So a very deliberate, high-profile image being crafted there.
It certainly seems that way. It paints a picture of someone really leaning into the public-facing aspect of the role.
Which brings us back to the internal reaction. The journal used words like irritation, grumblings.
Yeah, that's the language in the report suggesting some level of unease or frustration among certain ICE officials.
Why would that be, do you think? Just the publicity focus?
It could be a mix of things. Maybe worries about that operational security we talked about.
Like the Twitter post effect.
Exactly. Or perhaps a feeling that the focus is more on, optics and messaging than the actual complex work they do every day.
That makes sense. A potential disconnect between policy pronouncements and on-the-ground execution.
Possibly. Though it's important to note the official department line, again, via McLaughlin, is quite different.
What are they saying?
They're emphasizing that Secretary Noem's message is getting out, that border security is high, encounters are down, so they present it as effective leadership.
So a clear difference between the official stance and what's reportedly being felt by some within the agency.
It appears so. And then there was another incident more recently involving a social media video this time.
Oh, right. Tell us about that one.
This video showed the secretary with a couple of ICE officers, and she was holding a rifle.
Holding a rifle, okay. And what was said in the video?
She mentioned being out with the officers, Marco and Brian, and said something like, "We're going to go out and pick up somebody who I think got charges of human trafficking." And she added, "We earlier had an op that swept up somebody that was wanted for murder. So appreciate the good work that they do every day," praising their work.
But the image of her holding the rifle, that drew some criticism too, didn't it? Questions about weapon handling.
It did. It added another layer to this whole discussion about how officials engage publicly with these sensitive operations.
So wrapping this up, we basically have these two contrasting views. The administration seems to see this high visibility as a positive, as effective communication.
While, on the other hand, you have these reports, these alleged rumblings from within ICE, suggesting concerns about the methods, the focus on publicity, and maybe even the impact on actual operations.
It leaves you wondering, doesn't it? this tension between public perception and operational needs in government work, especially something as sensitive as immigration enforcement.
It really does. And maybe a final thought for our listeners to chew on. When public messaging seems to take such a prominent role, what are the potential long-term consequences, for the agency's effectiveness, its internal morale, even how it's perceived overall? Is visibility always the best measure of success?